how your perception of the world is genuinely equaling your own frame, and why your perception creates who you are. So let's get into it. As I told you, right, there is this principle of now to past. So, as you may understand that your frame, which is created at a certain point, right, is coming from here, then all that matters is here. So, as I'm currently talking to you, as I'm currently explaining this concept to you, I have a certain perception of the world. So what adds to perception, right? Because this is what we want to know, so we can understand what makes you special and how you can use that to build your own frame, or better understand how you can use your own frame and what are the specialties of your frame. So to understand what goes to here, we take certain things, right? We have first, obviously, you probably already thought about it. You have the eye, okay? You have the eye. So, your eyes, even though it doesn't may seem to you, can be biased in certain ways. What a bias is, I will explain to you in a later video, but for right now, it is probably important for you to understand that the bias is just you not being able to perceive something. You are biased in that regard. For example, let's say a bias is an unperception. So in your eye, there can be some things which you can perceive. Obviously, maybe you have a different perception, for example, towards light, okay? There is a certain thing which distracts your light view of the world, okay? And basically in women and men it is different. So because I'm a man and I have balls, I see in the night, while women don't. In the past, my mother, when I wanted to read books, came to me and said, well, you know, if you don't take on the light, you will have bad eyes. So she put on the light, you know, and I looked at her and I was like, I don't need to. I can see fine. I see fine. My eyes are fine. She was like, no, it's clearly too, there's too less light. Know what I mean? It's too dark. So, but this was only because of perception. She would perceive, okay, that there's like less light. So she perceived this like probably this. However, because I had a male eye, I would perceive this like this. Okay? Like for me, this was like this. And probably still is. Like I'm seeing a light and it's like I can see it. It's there. You know what I mean? It's like a ghost on the roof. Anyway. So, perception of your eyes, the first thing. Then obviously there comes the second thing, which is hearing, right? Obviously this is like a sweet and not an ear, because I'm a master drawer, right? So, hearing. There are people, even if it may come across as like a little bit weird when I say this, but there are people who hear differently as you. So hearing as itself, right? How would you measure it? How would you say, well, I hear louder than you? What would it take for you to understand that people are capable of hearing louder than you? It's a scale. So let's put that on a scale, right? So let's say this is a scale. And we have a scale. Okay, so here's 0 and here's 100. So there are people who will hear this, and there are people who will hear this. So this obviously also matters in forms of perception, okay? So then there's also such a thing as skin or touch. Man, I'm getting hungry when I see this broccoli, right? Anyway, that's a hand. So yeah. This hand is basically telling you that you need like touch, okay? Touch is one of your senses, and basically there is different such a thing as touch. And that is simply because your skin can have different layers, okay? There are people who have certain genetics, for example, for more skin layers, for thicker skin layers, for like, let's say, for more nerve cells in your hands, for example, or for less. And then there is also such a thing as, how do I explain that to you? Let me think about it. There's also such a thing as chemical perception. Right, so what is chemical perception? You may now see. Well, chemical perception is actually your ability by your genetics, by your very own distinctive cells within your body. So not maybe also your skin, but even under your skin, in your meat, in your very cells, there are like properties, proteins, who are capable of perceiving certain chemicals. So because people have different genetics, these chemicals which you can detect can differ from people to people, which also can end up in a different frame of the world in the end of the day. When it comes to, for example, my frame. So my frame is very strongly, I believe, dictated by hearing, okay? I can basically hear more than you. And that is not because I hear better in forms of I have superior hearing and like I can hear 1,000 of what you can hear, but it is probably because your brain dictates that you can hear up to just 30 to 50% of what you're really capable of hearing, because basically today's world is too loud. In case you didn't know that. Today's world is so loud that it basically is hurting your ear. Okay, so it's damaging practically. It's like, can I draw that? Oh yeah, that's good. Okay, so that's like a zap, if you don't recognize that. So the world right now is attacking your ears. And because of this, your ear is reducing the amount you can hear to up 50%. The longer you will stay, actually, you can do this. This is an exercise for you to do at home, or anyone who lives in a village probably even knows this. The longer you stay in the forest, up to, I believe, 30 days, your ears will begin to reduce the barrier they build into your system. So like from the 60% they will increase to maybe 70% or something. Because in a forest it is essential to hear the little noises, right? Because if the tiger is basically like disrupting a little stick and it like snaps and like, and you didn't hear that, well, you're dead now. So that's potentially the reason why when you are in a forest, you need to hear better. Our systems have evolved in a very like particular way, okay? They've evolved in a very sensitive way. But because we basically have overcome this and we're basically making now our own noises, we have like completely overflown the scale. Which is again why we go down to 50%. So I hear more than you, technically. Because I normally hear up to, I guess, 70%. Which is sometimes, I won't say I'm overflown by the world, but I say it is like a little bit different for me. Because when I sit at the workplace, okay, I basically can hear everything. And I mean that. I hear everything at the same time. So I can, when I sit and I work, okay, on my computer, I can hear what my colleague is doing in front of me, what she's telling her son. I can hear what my other colleague is doing behind me, telling his grandmother that she's going to die or some shit. And I remember this afterwards. So this then leads to the fact that I have a bigger reality and therefore I have a bigger frame. Okay? And that's what I meant by you have to understand perception so you know what your own frame is and how you can more accurately use it in order to create your custom reality. I hope you understand what I meant by it, finally. So let's get down to it. We have hearing, right? We have seeing, we have touch, we have chemical sense, and right. I think that crushed it. You can use these things to determine your perception of the world, okay? Let's write that down. Perception. So perception is really important, okay? Perception. That is the most important thing. Remember that, because that will be important over all the videos I will do. So this is a little aftercut since I forgot to mention two basically senses. So there is, besides seeing, hearing, feeling, right? There's also such a thing as basically smelling, right? So this is not a wasp nest, this is basically a nose, or at least supposed to be one. Right. There are people who are capable of smelling like certain gases, which basically, if they didn't, their ancestors would have died in the process 1,000 years ago. So right now they can smell it. So maybe if you are a person who can intensively smell something, well, it will help you. And that will again, what? Add to your frame. So, the last thing obviously left, right, is taste. So taste will also add into your perception of the world. Because even though it may strangely like sound to you, there are people who have different tongues than you, who have different genetics in terms of these as you have. Maybe also you are sick in some regard and like you can't properly taste something. That may also add to your frame in the end of the day. All these things are important to your frame. So recognize that. Right. So this was a great video. I hope you liked it. And if you have any suggestions on how I can communicate in a better way, how I can explain concepts to you in a better way, I suggest you write it down in the comments and you check out the links and descriptions I put into it. And I also hope that this gave you value and I was valuable to you today. Have a nice day, man.